Welcome back guys, hope you all doing great, and today's in this video we're gonna learn about React Redux. If you ask me guys whether I love it or not, of course to be honest with you, I don't like it. But we don't have any options because this is one of the most important concepts in reactjs. We need to learn it. I did a lot of research into YouTube, so finally I found a really nice video uploaded by one of my mentor named Developed by Ed. So I dropped his channel link in the description box, so please go ahead and learn all the advanced tips and tricks related to the web development. So let's jump into the video. Over here, I already created a reactjs project. It's just a plain empty reactjs. So open up the terminal, and to create a React project, all you have to do is to run this command yarn create react app dot slash. Okay, so that will create a React application in the current folder. If you are using npx, just you have to write npx create react app and give your project folder name. That will create the React project. Okay, so since we already created the React project, all we have to do is to add this following package. So of course we are using the Redux, so we need to add the Redux. So yarn add Redux, and we need to add React Redux. So press enter, so that will download the necessary packages. So it's downloading. So since now it's successfully installed. So here let's delete the unwanted files over here. So I don't need this, I don't need this. So let me delete it. And in the app.js, I'm just going to keep it simple. Let me delete the header, we don't need it. And I'm just going to say yes, h1 tag, h1, and let's say React Redux. Save the changes, and let's delete this unused file. And in the index.js, of course we don't have this one, so we delete this, and let's delete this import. Good. So let's run this yarn start, so that will trigger our React app. So it's loading. There we go. So now our application is up and running fine. Okay, so let's understand the purpose of the React Redux. So React Redux is nothing but wait a second, let me open this. Okay, so React Redux is nothing but it's kind of like a data layer which creates a data layer, like a data layer. This is a data layer, and we do have a components over here, multiple components. Okay, so whenever we need a state or a value, so we trigger an action. That action will execute that statement. Okay, so this is kind of like a data layer which helps us to share the states throughout the child components. Whenever we need it, we can access those states just by dispatching those actions. Okay, so we trigger an action, that action will helps us to collect the state from that data layer. Okay, so let's understand it in much more and brief way. Okay, so over here all we have to do is to create first we have to create the actions, then we have to create the reducers which is going to maintain all those the state values, and we need to create the store globalized. Basically we used to call this as a globalized store globalized store or globalized state or something. Okay, so we're going to keep in this is the store which is going to maintain all the state as a globalized, so that whenever we need any state in any child component, we can access it from this store. All right, then finally we just need to dispatch each and every action. All right, so here let's create an action. So I'm just going to use a very basic example which followed for all the React Redux. So let's do the counter application itself. So I'm just going to create and const increment equals. Okay, so let's create an arrow6 function, and let's return. Okay, so we need to return an action name, what exact action we are returning. So you can create an object as a name, or you can create as like what we can say, we can say as a type, So this action is going to be as an increment. All right, so save the changes, and of course I'm going to copy this and I'm going to create one more action as a decrement. Copy it, and let's say decrement, and here let me say the same thing as decrement. So these are the actions. Now for these actions we need a reducers to take all these actions and to work according with our states. So we need to create our state. That's where the reducer will comes in. So here I'm going to create a reducer as const counter equals, I'm going to create an arrow6 function. Of course this reducer is going to take two parameters. One is our initial state value and another one is our actions, what exact actions we are going to perform. So state, initially our state value is going to be 0, okay, because of course counter should always start from 0. So initial state is going to be 0, and the second one is the action, what exact action we are going to perform. So here I'm going to use the switch case to switch between the multiple actions. Okay, what kind of action is triggered, that switch case will handle those actions. So switch, and here I just need to give action dot type, because the reason I'm giving as action dot type, because this is the type, this is the type object we will send whenever we are triggering the action. So type, and here I'm just going to say case, and I'm going to type increment, exactly same as the name, what action name we are going to use them, what exact action name we used there. So then all we have to do is to return the state value, and we are going to update that state value with +1. Okay, then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy this one more time and I'm going to paste it, and this time I'm just going to say this value was decrement, no, not this one, and state -1. All right, so by default, if none of these actions are triggered, then by default return the state value, return state. Okay, this is the counter that we are going to work on. So now what I need to do is, basically we need to create a store now, because that's the main data layer, that's the place where we are going to put our state. Okay, so what we need to do is, all we have to do is to import a package, so import a class from Redux, where it is here, Redux. So here I need to import a class, create store. This is the package we need to use. And here now what I need to do is, all I'm going to say const store, oops, not state, store equals create store, and I need to supply our reducer in it. Okay, so basically we are creating a data layer, and inside that data layer we are pushing our counter state. Okay, now this globalized store is accessible throughout all our child components. Okay, so we need to make this globalized store as an accessible store for all our child components. Later I'll show you how to make it globalized store. Okay, so then what we need to do is, we need to make sure whether everything is working fine or not. All right, so we successfully created the store, and now we need to dispatch the action, what exact action you want to perform. Okay, before dispatching it, of course we need to visualize what exact changes are happening. So let's display the changes. So we're going to display it. So here I'm just going to say store dot subscribe. Subscribe is a method which helps you to perform a, like if you want to do any console log or anything, the subscribe method will help you to do all those functionalities. Okay, so subscribe here, and console.log. So from the store we need to get the state, whatever the state available, we need to get those state values. So store dot get state is a method that helps you to get the state values. So save the changes, and now I need to dispatch the action. So the action, what I'm going to try to do is just an increment. So store dot dispatch is also the method, comes along with your reducer, sorry. Then increment, that's the method we are going to do. So now if I go ahead and inspect the elements, and let me go to the console. You can see that it's showing the value as 1. By default, our state value is 0. Sorry, by default our state value is 0, and that 0 is updated due to this action which we dispatched. So if I copy this and let me paste it few more times, save the changes, and now look at that, 1 2 3, the state value is constantly updated. If you want to dispatch a different, so let's say decrement, a different action, now you can see 1, and again we dispatch the increment, that becomes 2, and after that we trigger an action decrement, so that value is decrement to 1. So this is how the actions will be dispatched and the state value will be updated. Okay, so this is just overall the view of your React Redux. All right, so but this is not a proper way to use your Redux. This is not a proper organized way to use all these codes and everything, because Redux provides you a lot of boilerplate code. So we need to organize those codes because later in a very big project we are supposed to create a multiple reducers and multiple actions, so we need to maintain them properly in a proper folder structures. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply delete all these stuffs which whatever we written so far. Let me delete everything. Okay, now I hope you understand how exactly the React Redux will work. So save the changes. Now all I need to do is to create a new folder over here called reducers, and let's create one more folder called actions. Okay, inside the reducers I'm going to create counter.js, and I'm going to create a new file for user.js too. All right, so here just exactly the same thing what we did for the in the app.js, in the index.js previously. We are going to maintain everything like actions separately, reducers separately, store separately. All we are going to keep it separately in an organized way, so that we can maintain the code which is understandable for everyone. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to create a reducer. So const, we need to type exactly the same thing again. So const counter reducer equals, let's say we need to provide the state, initial state, and along with that we need to provide the actions, and open the arrow6 function. And now we need to write a switch case, switch action dot type, open it, and here case, the case is going to be increment, and return state value plus 1. Cool. Then the second case is going to be decrement, and return the state value minus 1. And last, the default is going to be return the state, whatever the state, just return it. Then we need to export this reducer so that we can import it in the different file. So export default counter reducer. Just like the same way we need to do for our user objects too. So what we need to do is to create const user reducer equals, we just need to provide the initial state. Initially the user object is going to be null, then action. Oops. So here we need to provide the switch case, switch action dot type. So make sure this, try to avoid these spelling mistakes while typing itself. Okay, action dot type, and then case is going to be get user. So this is the action which helps us to fetch the user details from the data layer. So return return, let's say okay, for the time being let's just return the state, whatever the state value, we just return the state value. Okay, return state. Then by default also we're going to do the same thing, return state. Save the changes. All right, so now what we need to do, we just need to export it. Export default user reducer. All right, so now what we need to do is we just need to create a store with all these options. We need to create a store with all these reducers. So let's go ahead here. We already imported this. So now what I need to do, const store equals create store. I need to import all these reducers which we created. So counter reducer, comma user reducer. So think about it. This is also another proper approach because right now we do have only two kinds of reducers. So if you're working in a real-time projects, you might have a at least 10 to 20 different reducers. So we can't add all those stuffs inside this single line. That looks really awkward. So the better way is to combine all the reducers and we need to use it to create a store. So instead of doing in this way, what we can do is let's undo the changes and let's create a new file over here called index.js. Okay, and inside the index.js, let's import all the reducers over here. So here import counter reducer and import user reducer. Okay, and now we need to import a package, a class called combine reducer from Redux. So import combine reducers from Redux, and now I need to create an object. Let's say my reducers equals combined reducers. So I need to create an object of reducers. So you can directly supply the value as counter reducer itself. That will create a name, a counter reducer, and it will supply that value, your reducer for that particular object name. Or else if you want to create a custom name, all you can do, type your custom name over here, counter dot, and supply your reducer, counter reducer. Then user is equals user reducer, like this. And finally, we just need to export it as a default. Export default as my reducers. Save the changes. Now, in later, if you're creating any reducers for the any further actions and all those things, all you have to do, add those reducers over here. The rest, you don't need to do anything else. The rest will work exactly fine. Then what I need to do, or I have to get back to the index.js, and here I need to create a store now. Store is equals create store, and I need to supply my reducers over here. That's it. So that helps you to keep your code clean and simple. All right. So now what I need to do is I need to as I said, we need to make this state as a globalized state. So we need to create a provider. So that will provide these states throughout all our child components. So to do that, what you need to do is just use the provide class from the react-redux. So let's import the import provider from the react-redux. So then let's create a component provider and let's wrap our app component inside of it. All right, then what I need to do, I need to supply the store property. Basically the store property is going to be our store. So you can create a custom name or you can keep the exact same name as a store itself. That's fine. So they save the changes. Now this particular state value will be shared throughout our components. All right, so let's go ahead and let me see how exactly it's affecting our code. So to monitor that, so you have to install a Chrome extension called react-redux developer tools. So you can see this GitHub profile. So click this, and if you scroll down, you can see we can learn all the informations related to that developer tools for the Chrome or for the Firefox or for the different browsers. Okay, so here for the Chrome, you have to click the Chrome Web Store. So click it and go ahead and please add this developer tools in your browser. I already downloaded it and added it to my Chrome extension. So go ahead and please download it and add it. So then what we need to do is we need to add this particular line. So copy this line for the basic store, copy this line and add this line at the place where we are creating our store. Right after here, paste it. Okay, so this helps that developer tools to monitor all our state values. That's the purpose we are adding this particular line over here. Now once you added that developer tool, you can see the developer tool is over here. So if I click that, so this is the developer tool, right? So let me refresh it. This is the project. And if you click this, you can see actions. What are the actions we do have and what are the states you have? See, this is the state which we created, counter and user. These are the initial states of our uh, data layer. Okay, so we do have counter and the user, 0 and null. And difference, so difference will help you to what is the previous state value and what is the current state value. So you can figure it out what is the difference between them. All right, so now our data layer is created and we do have our initial state. So let's bring all these informations into our custom component. Okay, so let's go to our app.js. So here, after this place, I'm just going to create one more h1 tag and I'm going to say counter, and I'm going to display the counter value. So basically we need to display the counter value over here. So to use the counter value, first I need to fetch the counter value from the state. So that's the reason we're going to use a hook. So basically react-redux provides you a selector hook. So using that hook, you can fetch the data from the react-redux. So let's import hook react-redux. So the hook name is useSelector hook. All right, so using the useSelector, I'm going to fetch that particular state from our data value. Okay, so const counter, because that's the state name which we given. So you can see that's the state name where we created. This is the state name which we created because that's the state we're gonna access. So counter, so that to avoid misunderstandings, try to keep the same name in every place. Okay, so use selector. So get the state object. From the state, I need only the counter state, because check the name counter and counter, say the changes. Now we have the counter, and let's fetch the user objects too. So const user equals useSelector. From the state, let me fetch the state dot user object alone. So now we do have the necessary states which we needed, and let's display that value over here, counter. Say the changes. Look at that. Currently the counter value is 0 because the initial value is 0. So then what I need to do, I need to display the user name if the user object exists. So user, and if the user is exist, then display this paragraph tag and display that user name, user dot name object. All right, so currently it will not show anything because it doesn't have any value in it. Okay, so let's make this as a live interaction. Whenever I click plus, that should display, that should increment the value. Whenever I click minus, that should decrement the value. So what I'm going to do is, right after here, I'm going to create a division, and let's create a button. Let's say plus, and let's create one more button. Oops, button, and let's say minus. Okay, now we can see that we do have these two different buttons, but when I click this, nothing will happen. What we need to do is we need to dispatch those actions. Okay, so we created the reducers, but we haven't created the actions. So let's go ahead and create all the necessary actions. That's the reason we created the folder called actions. So let me create a file called index.js. So if you want to maintain the actions for user actions separately, for counter actions separately, you can maintain different file. In this case, I'm just going to create a single file. So because this is not, we don't have that much actions and all those things, but for a real-time project, of course, you need to maintain a different actions file. All right, so let's go ahead and create our actions. So actions is nothing but the same thing what we did, like increment or decrement, just the type object. Okay, so let's export the constant value. Export const increment equals an arrow 6 function. All right, and let's return an object, return with a type object as increment. Say the changes, and now let me copy this and paste it, and let's change this to decrement, and here let's change this to decrement. Okay, so now, and let's go here. Where is the app.js? And here inside the app.js, I need to trigger that action whenever the user clicks that plus button and the minus button. So to dispatch that action, of course, we need to use one more hook called useDispatch. useDispatch. So this is a hook which helps you to dispatch that particular action. So I need to create an object const dispatch equals useDispatch. That's it. Create the dispatch object, and whenever I click this button, on click, I'll call a callback function. I'm just going to say dispatch this action, dispatch the action called increment, which we created, like that. Then over here, on click, I'll create a callback function, dispatch the action called decrement, which we created. All right, so actions is added over here, and let's see whether it is working or not. So counter value is initially 0. So when I click this plus, counter is updating. Let me click 3 to 4 times. All right, so here you can see these are the actions which is triggered, and you can see the current value. If I click the difference, you can see the previous value is 5 and the current value is 6. And here you can see the play and pause button. So you can like adjust the state value, like you can adjust the actions if you want to see the actions throughout what exactly happened in the website. So you can adjust the actions over here. When I click and pause and play button, you can see what actions are performed one by one. You can have a look at the list of actions which you performed. All right, so now if I click minus, the decrement action is triggered, and if you go ahead and you can see the action triggered is called decrement, and you can see the state value is 5 and the difference from 6 it becomes to 5. Okay, so now what we need to do is we just need to bring our user information, of course, right? We need to bring our user information. So let's say I'm going to create one more button over here. So if there is no user, I need to bring one more button. I need to bring one more button. Okay, so here I'm just going to say set user. Of course, in a real time we use the Google authentication or email password verifications will fetch the real-time data from the Firebase or MongoDB, whatever the backend you're using. We'll get the data from there. We'll put that data to our data layer. For the time being, I'm just going to use the dummy data. I'm just going to dispatch a new action. I'm going to dispatch a new action. Basically, we are sending a data to our data layer. That means we are sending a value as a parameter. So what I need to do is we need to create an action that takes a parameter. So export const, let's say set user action equals, we'll get the user value, and we'll create an arrow6 function. Let's return that value, and the type of that action is going to be set user. That's the user, of course. And I'm going to set the object. I'm going to create one more object called user, and you can say pass that parameter over here. Okay, so you might feel very confused because we are sending the user object to this action through this action. Then I'm going to store it in this value, the state value. Okay, so you can use a different name as you wish, but I'm just going to keep the same name because to avoid the unwanted confusions. All right, so this is the action is going to trigger, and on click I'm just going to say set user action. So through this action I need to send the data. I'm just going to send the data as an object, ID as 1, and I'm going to send the name object as Vetrivel Ravi. Save the changes. All right, so now when the user clicks that get user button, so that will send this user details to our state, so that will update the state. Then this paragraph will be displayed over there. Let's see whether it is working fine or not. So if I click set user, nothing is happening. What is the mistake? Let's go here. Action set user is triggered and state value still it's null. Why? Refresh. Set user. Is there any mistakes in the console? I don't think so. Where is the console? Console, there is no mistakes. Set user, it's triggered. Do we made any mistakes? Nope. We dispatched that action. Yep, we dispatched it. ID and name. We got the perfect value, but the state value is not updating. Why? I'm sorry for the coughing. Set user, come on, why it's not working? Increment is working fine. Set user, it's supposed to work. I think I imported that package. Set user action, sending the detail, return the type, no mistakes in that, return the type, and returning that user detail. Set user, set user action, that the thing is getting triggered. Set user button, everything is perfect, but why it's not loading? User.name, name object is there. What's the mistake? Set user, I'm not sure. That is not updating the user value. Why? Reducers, user reducer, okay. All right, my bad. We created the actions, but in the reducer we didn't added that action over here. So here we have to add that action. So case, we need to send that action over here. So where is that? Set user action, copy this set user, let's go to the user object. That's the case. If this is the case, what we need to do is we need to return that user object over here. In the action we do have the user object, right? In the action we do have this user object. Whenever we trigger that set user, whenever the set user action is triggered, we need to send this state, we need to update that state value, right? So we failed to update that value, that's the reason it's not updating. So save the changes, and now if you go here and if you click set user, look at that, now we have our detail over here. And if you go ahead and check it, now you have our state value which is updated and it's up and running perfectly fine. So this is how you have to send a value to your Redux, and that will update the state in your store. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope I explained it well. If you have any questions or anything, just drop the questions in the comment box. I will drop the questions in the comment. I will try to help you out. All right, so I'll see you in the next video with a nice idea.